Did you know 80% of global tech businesses now adopt DevOps? Did you know that? What about the real elite teams, the really good elite teams? They deploy 973 times more frequently than teams that don't. Did you know that? And at least 60% of businesses who do adopt DevOps report massive increases in quality. All things you should know. Are you doing it? Let's find out. You're in the locker room. All right, welcome to the locker room. Welcome back, welcome along. If you've not done so already, hit subscribe, hit like, hit follow, leave us your comments, watch all the other good stuff that's on there, brought to you by the Tech Locker, the company that looks to protect your technology investment. DevOps, exciting world, burgeoning world, so much going on in this space. It's insane. It's one of the biggest technology talking points and debating points right now. Everything's got an ops associated with it these days, and we've got today's guest is perfectly placed as a DevOps Institute ambassador, a highly seasoned architect, and one of the most professional people in this space I've ever had the pleasure of working with. So please welcome into the locker room, Jamal Walsh. Tell us all about yourself.
Thanks for that introduction. It's lovely. Cheers, mate. I've been a solution architect for around 7 years now. Been a DevOps Institute ambassador for around 3 years. Worked in quite a few different industries. Currently working at a company called PHMG, one of the biggest audio branding companies in the world. Doing some amazing stuff there with software development around the music side of things. A keen interest in music myself. I'm no producer or anything, but I like to make a bit of music in my spare time. But yeah, it's really nice to be on the podcast. Thanks for the invite.
More than welcome, and really keen to get to the nub of this one. So before we go any further, it is one of those topics. I think you get a different answer depending on who you talk to. So define it for us, lay it out for us. We're talking DevOps, CI/CD, however you want to do this. What's the definition that we're going to launch from today?
It's always a good question, and there's a framework that I've used in the past, which is called CALMS. So that stands for culture, automation, lean, measure, and share. So if we take each of those kind of sections bit by bit, so culture, for example, is as part of DevOps, it's ensuring you have the right culture within your business to adopt kind of DevOps practices. And it's not just a development team thing; it tends to be a business thing as well. You need buy-in from potentially the board and other areas of the business to be able to truly kind of adopt DevOps practices as an organization. Fostering kind of a secure environment to work. DevOps is a lot about, you want to fail fast when you're doing CI/CD and DevOps and stuff like that. So having a safe environment to be able to experiment and fail fast and stuff like that is really important. So culture's massive. Automation. So I think a lot of people when they adopt DevOps tend to go down the automation route. First of all, they want to automate everything. It's not the be all and end all. It is massively important, but it's about automating those repetitive steps. I think you can get lost in that arena a little bit because of all the tooling that's available in there. But automation is a critical part of DevOps, and being able to, do the amount of releases that you mentioned earlier, right? Just I think there was an article a while back where I think they were looking at Google, and they're a massive organization, obviously, but they were doing 1,000 deployments a day.
A day?
Just a day, yeah. So they've obviously got a hell of a lot of engineers, right? But even that, right? And the kind of the real end game of it is to be able to be able to commit code and deploy it safely into production as quickly as possible. And if that fails, then rolling it back. And you can't really do that without automation. Being lean is another part of that. So not trying to, kind of waterfall kind of project management where you try and build a host of features and then deploying them in one big chunk, once a month. Again, being lean is more about breaking down your work, delivering value as quickly as often. Using things like feature toggles can allow you to build a larger feature, deploy that toggled off, and then apply other features to it over time. So yeah, being lean's really important. And then measurement is huge, right? I think we used to, in the past, measurement, you can get a bit vain when it comes to measurements and kind of measure the wrong things. So I think what I've learned over the past few years is that you don't need to actually measure that much, specifically from a DevOps point of view. So there's something called DORA metrics. So deployment frequency, deployment time, how long. So deployment frequency, how often do you deploy? Deployment time, how long does it take you from commit to deploying to production? And then the change failure rate and time to restore. They're basically the four main metrics you need from DevOps, when you're practicing DevOps. So making sure you measure those things and making sure you're pushing your team and continuously improving to try and improve those metrics is where you're going to get the real value when implementing DevOps practices. And then sharing. I love sharing, right? I prefer it over sharing. I remember working at the Very Group, and we had the Tech Forum. I don't know if you remember that, Neil.
I do.
And I just thought it was a really great forum for people to share anything and everything to do with technology. There were some amazing talks. And I think sharing within your teams across the organization is really, really important, just to help people learn and understand, new things and different things. Understand, especially if you're a larger organization and you have maybe a tribe and squad structure, and you want to kind of cross-pollinate information across teams around how they're working, and other teams picking up ideas from different teams and stuff like that. So sharing is super, super important. So that's basically how I kind of summarize DevOps as a practice, and what the things you should look at.
Yeah, you pretty much answered every other question I've got on these cards, so we can pretty much wrap it up there, I think. No, that's superb, and as a framework, I think that's absolutely amazing, because, like you say, it just gives you leaping off points at any one of those. I think the culture piece is interesting, because that's been challenged over time. Certainly in places, organizations I've worked, it's not a cultural thing, it's a tech thing, or it completely the other way. It's entirely cultural. You don't need a skill set. And it is very much, as you just outlined really articulately, it's that combination, that culmination of all of those things coming together. And there's, as always in our industry, many ways to skin a cat. But whichever route you take, you kind of got to tick all of those boxes. And when you layer out the way you've just done, you kind of go, why isn't everybody doing it then? And so what's the misconceptions, or what's on your journey? What have you found the rationale for businesses that kind of go, we don't need that?
I think it's just having a fixed mindset mostly. It's kind of like, this is the way we've always done things. It kind of works for us, and I think maybe poor implementations of the practices can kind of cause issues as well in business, and not understanding the value it delivers. I think the book Accelerate is a really, really good book if you want to understand why DevOps is important, and there's a lot of scientific research in that book, and it explains exactly why those DORA metrics are important. It explains why if you're trying to sell it into a business, the DevOps practices, if you turn around, I think always putting a financial lens on things, you turn around and say, look, we're going to be faster and drive more revenue by implementing DevOps, and this is what it could look like, then you get more buy-in. I think making sure you've got that sponsorship, having sponsorship from the top and the bottom, and having that drive to do it from the top and the bottom is really important. A lot of places I've been in, you've had to push it from bottom up. I've been fortunate enough to work in a couple of places where it's been both directions, both top down, good CTO, top down, driving those kind of practices, as well as the engineers and developers kind of pushing it as well. But I think a lot of companies probably struggle with the implementation and just fall back to type. not going back to the ways that they've always done things.
But it is about value, right? I mean, everything we do is always about value. It's about delivering something. Ultimately, there's a customer at the end, whether that's, whether an app, a website, a particular product for a particular site. It doesn't matter. There's always an end user and a customer. And therefore, it has to come back to value. But that value can be attributed at any number of levels. So with something like DevOps, I've always thought that actually there's as much value to the tech teams deploying that and being able to work in that environment as there is your product teams and your executive teams who kind of measure, as you were saying there, the kind of the financial sense. We deliver this quicker, first to market. You've always got that first player advantage then. And so that value is kind of tangible on both ends of that scale. And surely that's got to be a big reinforcing factor, like you say, for both ends of that scale to come together and go, well, let's just do it then.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is as well, there's a lot of effort involved in building out the tech and the processes to be able to deliver that quickly. For example, if you're in an organization where you're building out AWS services in the console, for example, right, and you're used to doing it that way, then turning to infrastructure as code, there's a big learning curve there. Making sure all your code's in a repo, making sure you've got pipelines in place, making sure those pipelines are set up correctly, making sure you've got all the testing, automated testing in place, making sure you've got all your security tooling in place. It's a lot of work, and it's about once you decide to kind of go on that DevOps journey, it's about making sure it's the balance between delivering value for the organization and building out a set of DevOps practices, and balancing that value, right? Because no company is just going to let you spend 2 or 3 months building out all the tools and processes to deliver value, right? They still want you to deliver value, and I always find that that's the hard part, finding the balance between continuously delivering value and continuously improving your processes as your DevOps practices as a team.
So let's get into that a little bit, because it's interesting. Because I agree that there's always it sounds great, but I've got to do this right now. So you're always kind of trying to change the engine mid-flight, aren't you? You always got to do the risky stuff whilst doing the BAU stuff, and that's a challenge for everybody involved. You've not got the luxury of a team that you can just park away who are going to focus on that. They're always being repurposed. So how do you convince a business that actually there's always an element of slowing down something in order to just bring that other element up? So how have you managed to convince businesses that?
It's a very, very tough conversation, not going to lie. It's kind of it's explaining the value of being faster and having better quality and what that means to the business. Trying to articulate that to, I don't know, a finance director, for example, or a CEO, can be quite hard sometimes. I think one of the ways we've done it in the past is to make work visible and agree with the business. Okay, so we understand what our capacity is to deliver value. What we're saying to you is we want to take 20% of that capacity and use it to improve how we deliver that value. And then over a period of time, we'd say our ability to deliver value will increase. You've got to be really serious about it and say, look, there are going to be huge benefits to doing this, but you have to take that initial hit. And I don't think I think some companies make the mistake of, okay, we're done now. Yeah, we are where we are. We've got our code in a repo. We've got pipelines. We've got automated tests, and then they kind of just stop there. But there's absolutely so much more. So my view is once you get that 20%, portion of value delivery, then you try and keep hold of it as long as you can, and potentially increase it if you can. Because, like I say, making yourself faster is more important, in my view, than actually delivering value. And obviously you still deliver value, but I think it's really important that you continuously improve as a team. Because there's a great saying: "As if you're not improving, entropy ensures you're getting worse." So you've always got to be looking at how you work and continuously improving how you work to stay at the kind of, the cutting edge of how you develop and deploy software.
Who's the biggest voice of challenge across the tech space? Because obviously, the quicker you go, there's a risk around quality, right? And I touched on some of the quality metrics. 60% of businesses who get this right show a quality improvement, but there's still organizations that are not indicating that. So that either means that they've not got it right, or something's out of whack somewhere. So is it the quality teams, is it the test guys maybe that are probably the slowing down force?
So I always find one of the key parts of kind of CI/CD DevOps is test-driven development. So writing tests early on, writing tests first, and then have those tests fail, and then build your feature around those tests, get them to pass, and deploy them. I think that's a massively important step. I think some engineers struggle with that because they're used to just writing code and don't have the experience of writing really good unit tests, for example. I've found that where I've worked previously and at PHMG is if you bring in a really good QA engineer who understands how to write really good unit tests and support and not actually. So one of the things in DevOps you want to avoid doing is handoffs, right? So the idea is you want to be able to build and deploy into production rapidly. Handoffs, any kind of handoff in your process just kind of creates delays, right? So I think a great way of kind of supporting that implementation is to get experienced people in the areas where you're struggling. For example, QA, get them to kind of pair with your engineers and work alongside them and show them, do some pair programming. Let the developers drive and the Q engineers show them what they need to do and how they should be doing things to make sure they're writing, the right kind of tests and things like that. And I think the other benefit you get from doing all of that work up front is that if you then release a small change in the future, you can be really confident that you've not broken anything else because everything else has got tests wrapped around it and it will fail. So your confidence for deploying into production, increases significantly. But it's getting the steps in the right order and getting that quality in early is the hard part. Again,
So
engineers.
if you're a startup, then if you're a tech startup and you've maybe got a couple engineers or whatever it is that you've got, you would absolutely advocate do this first, get this framework in first before you go too far down that line.
Yeah, well, that's a really interesting question because I've got a friend, Andrew Beacock, who works at a startup at the moment called Fuzzy Labs. We've had conversations about startups and building these DevOps pipelines for a startup. Now, I think as a large company, as an enterprise company, you're probably not too bad. As a startup, your budget's probably small, the number of people is probably small, so you probably want to get value out there even quicker, right? So it's a really interesting conversation around, for example, I could deploy if I needed a WordPress site, for example. And I'm a startup. There's no way I'm going to spend a few weeks building out the source code repo for the changes, all of the hosting as infrastructure as code and things like that. I'm just going to spin up a WordPress site and put some content on there. So it's about finding the right balance in the right situations. If you've got the time and the budget as a startup, then fair enough, right? And you're pretty confident that startup's going to be successful. Then yeah, go for it. But I would always say, be lean, right? Be as lean as possible, especially in the startup space. Money's not easy to come by, right? And obviously, you're not going to have many people working for you. And then I think once you've proven that something's going to be successful, then you can start retrofitting all of those things in to make your processes more secure and make them more scalable as you grow your team.
So that's the thing, isn't it? And I guess it was a slightly devil's advocate question, because like you say, there's kind of pros and cons, and it very much depends on how big your pockets are, I think, in that startup moment. But if nothing else, the point of consideration has to be there, right? So if you know you're confident where you're going, or you're at least ambitious enough to go 12 months from now, I'm looking to double the team, triple the team, release X to the market, 17 customers to whatever it is, at least know how you're going to come back and either retrofit or build in that kind of infrastructure and that cultural shift at that point.
Yeah, and I think those having discussions around good and bad technical debt is probably a really good thing to be able to do as a team. So, I mean, if you're releasing a completely new product, it's kind of like, well, am I gonna build out a repo? Am I gonna build out pipelines, put all the security steps in, or am I gonna do this as lo-fi as possible just to get some feedback from the end users? And those are the questions people should be asking themselves, right? Because again, you've got to think about waste as when you look at engineering. Waste is, I've been on some projects and worked at some places where the amount of waste is quite staggering. Where a load of effort's put into a piece of work, takes ages to develop, it's deployed, and nothing happens. And you're talking like between 3 and 6 months worth of work in some cases. This is quite a while back, and then it's kind of like, well, we could have done that so much easier, right? We could have put the feelers out there in a much quicker, much more efficient way to see if there's any appetite initially for the product. So I think it's always asking yourself that question, right? Is there a quicker and leaner way we can do these things?
Talk to me about AI, because obviously you can't move without hearing or seeing those two letters applied to everything. Even a can of Coke these days has been inspired by AI somewhere, which I don't quite understand, but there you go, it's me. But we've now got this term AIOps, and everything, whatever tool set you pick up, whatever approach you're looking to deliver, you can apply AI to and make everything better, more efficient, whatever. How does it work in this world? What's it done for it?
Yeah, so I think there's a few different parts to this. So I think when you're talking AIOps, MLOps, I think that's more around the practices of developing AI solutions, right? So Fuzzy Labs I mentioned before, they're in the MLOps space, and they're looking at how you develop and deploy machine learning. Right, and looking at the processes involved in that. I've not done much in that space specifically around how you do build and deploy generative AI and stuff like that. It feels like a really new space, and there's a lot of learning going on at the moment. I think with regards to AI, generative AI, as part of the current software development life cycle, so building applications, websites, and things like that, I think it's going to be absolutely massive, transformative. I mean, you can see it bleeding into it already. There's tools like Cursor, which is AI assisted. You've got Copilot, people using already. You've got AWS, Amazon Q for developers. All of these AI assistants that can help you with regards to developing code, building infrastructure. I think if you look at the software development lifecycle, for me, it's going to touch every single part of it, from discovery all the way through to operating and monitoring. So from a discovery point of view, using AI to generate images, generating mind maps, all of that kind of stuff, all the way through to coding, supporting you with the code, then supporting you with testing the code, deploying, and then functionally testing the code and giving feedback on UX and things like that. Then to deploying the software and monitoring and even self-healing the software, right? So if something goes wrong, the AI can pick that up and knows exactly what it needs to do, take down some, restart some EC2 instances or whatever.
So in a broader sense, then you're right across that industry, because if I'm listening to what you've just said and I'm kind of an engineer, a tester in UX space, wherever, depending on where your mindset is, you're kind of thinking, yikes. And the podcast I did with Ben Cadell around the kind of app development and he was honest. He said, "Yeah, I'm terrified because there's AI that can do everything I can do." And so he was coming at it from a position of needing to work out how he uses AI to inform and better what he can do so that he's not effectively done out of a job. So what's your view more broadly there? Is it an industry that's still going to need people several years down the line?
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's just going to change the way people work. So I think if you look at DevOps and the way that it's improved how efficiently you can get value to customers, I think AI is just going to 10x that, right? So those DevOps practices will still be in place. They'll just be supplemented by tooling that makes that whole process a lot quicker and a lot easier. So actually, delivering value um, is going to be, super fast. Um, just being able to get support. Like I mentioned earlier, if your team is struggling doing test-driven development, and they're struggling writing tests, there's an AI tool out there that can help them do that. Um, so yeah, I think over the next 12, 18 months, I think it will supplement the engineers. In the next 2 or 3, 4 years, God knows where it's going to go, right? I think prompt engineering is becoming a huge thing. So I think one thing you've got to think about with a lot of these AI tools is you've got to tell them what to do, right? They're not just, a lot of them aren't just going to automatically do stuff for you. So I think if you get to the point where they're automatically doing stuff, then you want to start worrying. But but yeah, I think getting a good understanding of how these tools work, how to write really good prompts. There's loads of great cheat sheets out there that help you understand, things like when you're using Chat GPT, for example, making sure you use a role when you're kind of generating your prompts. You can actually set it up to say all of these prompts from now on are in the role of X. And then it knows to generate responses based on that role, and it just makes the responses much more accurate.
So where are you going? Where are you taking this? Because I've got a whole thing here around the future, and like you've just said, no one really knows. No one can accurately kind of predict where this stuff's going. You can have a best guess. Skill set wise, where are you taking yourself in order to make sure that you're as well placed as possible?
So I think one of the areas I'm starting to look into a lot more is the MLOps side of things, and actually generating your own machine learning algorithms and things like that. I think I think within organizations there's huge potential for not only using AI to support you in building software and deploying software, but also using AI to build applications and services for customers. Um, so understanding, we've started to look at SageMaker and other Hugging Face and other platforms like that to understand how we could leverage AI as an organization, and then building AI-enabled features and capabilities within the organization. And that for us is just a natural next step. We've already started at PHMG. We're already exploring AI in a lot of different areas of the business. So yeah, there's tons of potential there.
Makes complete sense. As you look at all of this, as you right across, this whole space, is there any industry that you would advise should just fundamentally steer clear of the kind of the DevOps framework?
Not a single one. I think there's a saying that every company is a technology company nowadays. So yeah,
True.
my
Yeah.
my view is, you know, I think I think some companies don't feel like they're set up to be a technology company, whereas I completely disagree. Right? If you're a business, you should be leveraging technology as much as possible. The stuff that the AI is doing now is just a game changer. And the thing is, like, if you look at if you look at companies that, like the stats you mentioned at the top of the chat, if you look at companies that have adopted DevOps, adopted AI, the benefits they're gaining out of it are just phenomenal. So, I mean, if you don't adopt these things, then you're just going to be left behind. And the thing is, you're going to be left behind a lot quicker. So there will become a point where there's no chance for you to catch up.
So just my next question was just before we kind of change pace a little bit, but my next question was just about to be, to the millions of people watching this, obviously, what's your message if you're a tech business owner or a tech leader or somebody who's got to invest in this and they're mulling it over? What's your piece of advice? And is that it in a nutshell? If you don't, you're screwed. You're going to get left behind.
Yeah, I think the main one is, if you from a DevOps point of view, if you've got engineering teams and you're not adopting DevOps, then, and your competitors are, then they're going to be delivering value and feature way more quicker than you will ever be able to do. So it's massively important, not just for the benefit of the engineering teams, right? I think once engineering teams adopt these practices, they become better engineering teams and happier engineering teams. There's nothing worse than being an engineer and then working on something. I mean, the greatest thing about being an engineer is that feeling you get when you delivered some value. And if you're waiting around to deliver some value and then you deliver it and it takes a long time and then the feedback isn't great or it doesn't work out, that's not a great feeling. Whereas if you're adopting DevOps and you're continuously delivering value, your engineering teams are going to feel a lot better. Your business is going to be a lot better because you're adding value. There's just so many benefits to it.
Perfect, and agreed. Start work on a Monday, have released no later than Friday, right? That's where we want people to be, and that unless you work at Google and then you're releasing by 5 minutes into your brand new job. So
yeah, so I think when I was at the Very Group, we had a target of commit and deploy on your first day. That was an interesting, because I think in some cases it could have took, when I first started there, it could have took maybe a week or two before someone actually got some code into production. So we were saying, right, okay, how if our target is a new engineer starts, how quickly can we get them set up, get them to make a small commit and get that into production? And we want to do that within a day. So that was kind of the thing we aimed for. I think we eventually got there, to be honest with you. It required a lot of effort because of the system setup and all of that kind of stuff, and we had to automate quite a bit of stuff. But it was stuff like that is kind of useful.
There was also nervousness, if I remember, around some of the regulatory pieces about making sure that you get your messaging right, but that's a whole other podcast in itself.
Yeah.
All right, a few quick fire questions coming at you. Biggest influence on your career?
Oh, I would say Gene Kim, Phoenix Project book.
Good book. Biggest achievement?
Oh, that's a good one. I think working at the Very Group and working on one of the the largest pure play retailers and replatforming their entire legacy Oracle platform, that was a huge piece of work, and we achieved quite a lot there.
Hardest lesson you've learned along your journey?
Oh, there's so many. I think thinking to yourself doing something the easy way is probably the worst way to do it. And that kind of sums up DevOps, right? There's always an easier way to build and deploy software, right? If you want an EC2 instance, you can just go in and click a button in the AWS console. However, if you need to redeploy that instance exactly how it was at the time you left it, it then becomes a lot harder. So I think, taking shortcuts can have a detrimental effect on things. It's probably one of the biggest lessons I've learned.
You heard it here, folks. Don't take shortcuts. No compromise. Advice for younger Jamal or kids sort of thinking about entering this industry now, sitting exams wherever?
Yeah, I think one of the things I did was when I was younger, and I'm glad I did it. I wish I did it more. Was actually take time out. Right. I think in the working day, the tasks that you do aren't necessarily things that will kind of improve your knowledge and skills in some cases. So making sure you set time aside to explore new things and just have that kind of growth mindset, and really push as much as you can burn out a little bit, right? If you do too much. But I think just having that growth mindset and wanting to continuously learn and understand new things is massively important.
Yeah, I think that kind of sums our industry up, doesn't it? When you're in it, you're kind of caught in that trap. You've got to have that mindset, otherwise it becomes really hard because there's so much new stuff coming at you constantly. If you're not there, you're kind of shot. All right, and last question we ask everybody who comes in here. This is the locker room. What's in Jamal's locker that's made you the success that you are?
I'd say I just love doing what I do. So I think it's having a passion for the things that you do. I think if I lost passion in like the tech space and the things that I'm working on, then the effort just wouldn't be there. So I think having that passion and drive to do things is what I love doing. So.
Good answer. All right, listen, thank you so much for your time. That has been a really, really insightful walk through this whole space. And to be quite honest, I think we could have talked for hours and hours and hours in this domain. Yeah, we've barely scratched the surface. But I'll put all of Jamal's details in the notes. So if you want to get in touch, pick his brains, throw lots of cash at him for no reason whatsoever. Of course, the choice is yours. But Jamal's one of the best brains in this particular space. So do leave comments, do leave questions. I'm sure he'd love to hear and read all of those, as would we all. Subscribe, like the podcast, listen to some of the others. All of this comes together. It's all about this kind of technology chats. But for now, Jamal, thank you so much for giving up your time. That's been hugely interesting, massively insightful. And remember, if you're a business who's thinking about it, you're going to get left behind if you don't. So on that note, good to see everybody. We'll see you next time in the locker room. Take care.